Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
Well, hey there. You have found your way to another episode of the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey of this show that we designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show every single week with Craig Brown. Craig is an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Hey, Craig, how are you today?
I'm great, Thom. I think the winter might be ending, maybe.
Well, I live in Texas.
The big falls here.
I live in Texas, and we will be happy never to see winter again. You can keep winter in Michigan.
Well, we'll see. We had nice snow cover, and today it's in the 40s, so it's turning into a slushy mess.
I've lived in Austin for 30 years, and I've never seen teens or single digits, and we had that for 6 days. So it was a little cold here, but I finally got running water back at my house after 5 days. So we are moving forward back to normal.
You know, that's an advantage of all this remote work is we don't really care if we took showers. I'm just saying.
Well, Craig, I promise you, I have taken a shower, so it's all good. So for those of you listening, every single week, Craig and I try to bring to this podcast interesting interviews and other ideas to help all of our listeners enhance and grow their careers. And today we have Scott Wertel, and Scott is the Chief Engineer at the Institute for Process Excellence. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Thom, thanks for inviting me.
Well, I appreciate you coming. You know, as I was kind of looking at your background and stuff, you know, the only way I can describe you is you help make companies better. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do now?
Yeah, a little bit of my background, studied mechanical engineering and have worked in manufacturing and operations as tool designer, project engineer, all the way up through my career. And I will say I drank the Kool-Aid in configuration management. It is something I've had a knack for my entire career. And when I got certified in it from the Institute of Configuration Management, that's what it was called at the time, I ended up doing a career switch, going into configuration management full-time, and then got tapped on the shoulder by Joe Anderson with the Institute for Process Excellence. And here I am now, helping them basically implement configuration management across their customer base.
Hey, Scott, welcome. You know, Joe and I have a shared background in central Indiana in the automotive industry. And one of the things that when I went back to the Midwest, I'm from the Midwest as well. When I went back to the Midwest from the East Coast, I was surprised at how these large companies really didn't appreciate the notion or the principles of configuration management. And so you would have these incidents inside of car manufacturers, and this is in the 1980s, 1990s, where almost always it came back to somebody forgot what the parts list was that went into the product. And this can be any kind of part, from the software part to a bolt to a particular engine controller or whatever. So, you know, configuration management, it just doesn't roll off your tongue, right? It's not a popular topic. On the other hand, it's really, really important. And maybe you could elaborate on how you came to that same realization of how important it was and how important it is. And then, you know, as you visit different companies, how do you get it across to them that it really is important? It's something that you got to spend time on.
Well, I'll start with an anecdote, again, kind of from the background of my career, was as a tool designer. So, you know, if you've been in manufacturing at all, you know you can't make your own product and sell your product if you can't build it. Plain and simple. So you have to invest in the tooling to do it. So tooling is an expense. It's always considered an expense. It's categorized as an expense. And how do you measure whether you have a good tool or a bad tool? You really can't. I mean, if you look simply by the financials, you're going to buy the cheaper tool, because the lower the expense, I still make my product, it goes out the door, higher net profit. So how do I justify paying more for essentially the same tool, but maybe it's a higher quality tool, maybe it's a longer lasting tool? And the answer is cost avoidance. And so that's the issue we come with configuration management too. It's considered, quote unquote, the necessary evil. No one wants to invest in it, but it's an incredibly powerful tool to help avoid costs. So if you've ever found yourself in a warranty situation, in a recall situation, in a quality escape situation, like you said, where they just accidentally missed something, what's the benefit of avoiding the cost that goes with that? And it's not just financial costs. We're talking brand image cost, opportunity cost for what else you could be working on besides reworking a problem. And is it worth doing a little more upfront effort and maintaining good configuration management to avoid those costs?
Yeah,
obviously, my answer is yes. I wouldn't have gone in the career if I didn't think so. Measuring and improving it, though, that's hard, because it's very hard to measure what doesn't happen. It's hard to prove that it would have happened had you not done it or done it. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, it's like a lot of technology innovations or even process changes in companies. Sometimes you just have to wait for the right circumstance, which probably means failure.
Which usually means failure.
And then when you have that, well, then all of a sudden people are like, well, you're the expert, Scott. What do I need to do to avoid this the next time? And that's probably a good way to get into a discussion about, well, if the root cause is configuration management, meaning you don't know what's in the tool design, to use your example, then you better get on with fixing your configuration management practices. Now, it always sounds bureaucratic, and anytime you put humans in charge of checking, it always sounds more and more bureaucratic, and so it feels like an additional cost. And I think the good leaders, the really good leaders, they understand that if we can prevent the spill, the inconsistency that comes out of a plant, then it's well worth that extra cost to do the quality control. In fact, maybe that's a good question. Is quality control configuration management, or is configuration management needed for quality control?
Configuration management is needed for quality control.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually one of the, I will say, I'll call it a conflict. One of the conflicts that we deal with quite often when trying to implement good configuration management is the quality department is heavily resistant on it. They are probably one of the more resistant.
Interesting.
And again, I'm very much generalizing, so please don't go look at yourself and think I'm pointing fingers.
So
they
resist because it's not their thing? Is it a not invented here thing, or is it something else?
They want ownership. Yeah. They think problems and corrective and preventative action and all that type of stuff is in the quality domain, and it does not belong outside of the quality domain. So unless configuration management is part of quality, which they typically don't want, and it typically is not, it's either under engineering or on its own, there's that political conflict between how quality resolves any particular issue and how configuration management would resolve it.
That reminds me of part of the teachings from Edward Deming about you can't review in quality. Quality comes way up front, way up front. And if your quality department is nothing but a bunch of specialists measuring tolerances at the end, chances of them, they may find a failure and throw it in the trash pile, but they won't fix the real problem, which is upstream of that. So it's interesting. Organizations need to embrace certain principles. Configuration management is one of them. Integrated change is another. Let's move to digital engineering. Right here at the Digital Enterprise Society, we use a lot of computer-based tools, and you probably have used them as well. Those first tool and die you made, did you have a model, or did you go from a 2D drawing?
I started on the board. Just don't tell anybody. And
you're not that old. Really? There's still boards? Okay.
I'm if I can get off topic, and this is something I guess that I will share, because for me it was a valuable skill set.
Mm-hmm.
On the drawing on the board gave me the time I needed to think about all the manufacturing steps. If I'm designing a part, I'm picturing the setups on the CNC, on the mill, on the lathe, all while I'm designing, and I can design in the manufacturing steps while I'm doing it. So I had some very efficient parts going on. I also, because it was two-dimensional only on the board, I could have entire machines in my head moving. I could picture all the interfaces. I could picture the timing and the stepping. All that was there. And that was a skill that I built over time by having to do it by drawing on the board. As I moved into 2D wireframe CAD and then, of course, 3D solids modeling, my skill set about being able to visualize in 3 and 4 dimensions is starting to wane. I will admit it, because I'm so used to now just plugging it into the computer, running an animation on the computer, having it spit out the answer for me. If I didn't have that background of work on the board to actually be able to check and make sure the computer was giving me a reasonable result, it would be garbage in, garbage out. So there's benefit to still doing and learning some things the hard way and giving yourself time to think.
Well, and yeah, so the time to think is an excellent point. Also, the sometimes the improvements our tool vendors make in this area are all about the speed of drawing the model, right? Or speed of simulating the model. And I get it that speed sells, but this point about human time to comprehend, the human understanding like a machine path to know that you can actually make that part rather than go through a mock-up at a trial run that takes 3 months and then you find out you can't make it. So yeah, digital technologies need to maybe focus a bit more on improving the understanding and a bit less on speeding the authoring, if you will. It's one of the things I couldn't agree with you more. It's not that it dumbs us down, but it's like any muscle. If you don't use it, this problem-solving muscle of visualizing in your head how things will come together, you may not be as good of an engineer, which is an interesting conclusion.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you, I've been on my soapbox, and I'm going to use this platform to soapbox once more.
Okay.
I have been telling software developers that, removing human error and taking humans out of the loop is great for efficiency and for speed, but they need to do a mind shift change and start designing software tools with human in the loop, because there are things that humans are much better at and will continue to be better at than computers ever will. And we need to start designing software knowing where we're going to put human into the process.
That's interesting. So what are your top 2 that you'd like to see improved in that area?
Oh, top 2, put humans in the loop of the process. I don't know. I'm not a software developer. I would like to completely ignore that. But
well, I'll let you in on a secret. I developed software once upon a time, both tool software and embedded software. And I tell you what, the best experiences I had that improved software were all about going to the plant floor and seeing how things really work, right? And in the case of embedded software, seeing how customers really interact with the feature that we were putting in the car. So I think you're right. Maybe this is a whole new area we should explore, is what's the role of the human ability to take abstract and partial information and be able to reach a conclusion quicker than a computer that, all this machine learning and AI that's going on. They can crunch millions of cases of data and show you patterns. But that last intellectual leap, or that aha moment that humans can have on a pretty regular basis, the computers they're not able to do that. They don't have the algorithms to do that. Even the algorithms we all interact with when searching the web, right? Mm-hmm. It's annoying where they train themselves, and then I keep getting the ad for the thing I bought last week.
Exactly.
You would think they'd be smart enough to not give me the same ad again, right? I'm on to buying the next thing.
Something similar, not for the same thing I already have. I'm not going to click that link.
It's like a really naive algorithm, right? So.
Yeah. The other thing too, if I want to add number 2 to your list, I love generative design. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's fun to use. I think humans are much more creative than computers.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, the trouble with generative design is it's only as good as all the load cases that help you drive the choices. And as we're all learning, we know many of the load cases, but you take a car, for instance, into another environment in the world, and then you find a new load case that breaks it, right? And it's like, whoops. Well,
like Tesla's door handles freezing shut, so you can't get into your car.
You're not supposed to use it in warm weather.
Pretty obvious one.
Well, you just use it in warm weather, which means you don't take it to Texas in the month of February. We just learned that lesson, right? Anyways. Okay, well, this is interesting. Now, we've all been living with the pandemic this past year, and we've been chatting a lot with our guests about how it's affected your work. Fill us in. What's going on with your work, and is it influencing the the kind of people you guys at IPX are working with?
Well, IPX specifically, no, because we were a 100% remote company to begin with travel. So we got out to travel. Because we were remote, we invested a little bit more in like Zoom and some newer technologies that came out. I will say it's hard. I'm exhausted staring at a camera, having meetings. That energy that you got with a face-to-face or in a conference room with people definitely helps make it through the day. So really IPX, not much financially and stuff like that. I won't get into details, but a lot of our customers obviously had to postpone some stuff. We made it through it. We're doing great. Things are well. Our customer base, though, that's the more interesting one, obviously, to talk about.
Okay.
The resilient ones are the ones that were always resilient to begin with. They're the ones that have the culture, have the mindset of yes and.
Yeah.
And you can, I don't know if this is a video podcast or recorded, just audio.
It's just audio. You and I can see each other, but we're not pretty enough to put on the web.
Yeah, so let me describe the scene behind me then for the listeners.
Speak for yourself, Craig.
Well, I'm old and ugly. That's just the truth.
Yeah, so in my office, right, and I do have a dedicated office to work from home. I leave my laptop in my office. I'm very, very conscientious of not letting work go out into the other parts of my house.
That's a wise piece of insight right there, because that's one of the problems is people taking their laptop everywhere in their house. You don't know the boundary anymore, right? And it's good to have a boundary.
But
Carry
because
on.
I have limited space in my house, my office is also my studio. So right behind me is my drum kit set up. And a lot of the life lessons I've learned were from some of my drum mentors. And one of my first mentors when I was still gigging in freelance drumming was always say yes, and then figure out how to do it later.
Oh, interesting.
And there's a lot of philosophy about letting people take advantage of you and the power of no and all that. So I want to make sure I put this into context. The minute you start saying no to an opportunity or to a gig is the day they stop calling you.
Yeah.
So you say yes to whatever opportunity you can have, to any new opportunity, any new chance, any new learning lesson, and then figure it out later. Don't be scared. You might fail, but if you don't try, you will never have that opportunity to begin with, period. So yes, and.
So these folks that are listening, if you work at a company that shrunk budgets, you're probably not resilient. That's the lesson I just took from you, because I would absolutely agree. The things that I do part-time here in early retirement, it was interesting who actually increased their funding. It was already the leaders. The leaders got in there and they said, well, so we're stuck at home. So what? Let's go figure out how to improve our business, right?
Yeah, we make the analogy of, making a process change in a company is like changing your tires while flying down the freeway at 65, 70 miles an hour. It's really hard to do. We had a whole year where almost everybody was shut down. If you didn't have an opportunity to go change your tires in this year, you missed the opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So there is a silver lining in situations like this pandemic, and I it's looking better and better nationwide, at least the metrics that we watch. And so, boy, I hope by the fall time, maybe we're all together at one of your conferences. That would be really nice.
Yeah, so, from one introvert to another, I'm really looking forward to being around people again.
Yeah,
so that's interesting. That's interesting because I hear that from people all the time because I speak and Master of Ceremonies a lot of tech conferences, and people are calling me and sending me notes from conferences that I've been at saying, I never thought I would say this again, but I want to come back to a conference where you're teaching us how to network. I want to meet people.
Yeah, people are tired of being isolated, and isolation occurs for lots of reasons, but not being able to go down to the corner store just for the heck of it. I mean, my wife and I, we stopped doing that just because we're trying to follow the guidelines, right?
And IPX puts on a fun conference because I was the Master of Ceremonies at the last one they did a year and a half ago.
Yes, it was fantastic, and assuming that 2022, hopefully it'll be later this year, 2021. We'll be back at where we were at the one you were at. So same location.
Cool. San Diego in August. That would be great if that can happen. That would be fabulous.
Yes. So everybody, whatever God you believe in, whatever manifesting you want to do, let's make this happen.
Okay. Well, the current trends are in our favor. I couldn't say that a couple of weeks ago. So let's hope we don't see the fourth wave, right? That's the other negative side people are starting to talk about is when's the fourth wave going to start? But anyways, let's move on to a different topic. So I saw in your background, Scott, that you were involved in an SAE aerospace student competition. So let's go back. I also, but I didn't do SAE. I was AIAA, a different group of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like student competitions, and I'm curious why you did it and what did you learn from it?
Why I did it was because all practical reasons, to graduate, I needed to do a senior design project.
Oh, okay.
And that one was the most interesting because I love aerospace. I love aviation. I dream about it. I'm a private pilot. When known that was an opportunity to actually go design and build an aircraft as part of a competition, even though it is only a model aircraft, I couldn't say no.
Okay.
Now, to give you a hint, this isn't your normal, average, everyday model aircraft. Our wingspan was somewhere around 20 feet long, and the minimum capacity that we would put in there just to get a balanced aircraft could carry a small child. So there may not have been any seats in it, but we did lift a small human.
So you were a drone. You were just ahead of your time. That's what you're telling me.
Well,
right?
it was not a drone. It was not. We still had the pilot on the ground. He's
okay.
In the Milwaukee area because that's where I went to school. He was a very well-known model RC pilot, and which was great because he saved that airplane numerous times by his skill in flying because our design was not stable. But that was a design choice, honestly. One was a competition about lifting weight, and in an unstable characteristic, we had both the empennage and the wing as lifting surfaces, so we could lift more weight, which naturally puts the airplane in an unstable condition because it wants to flip, tail over nose.
Right.
And,
depends where that center of gravity is, right?
Yeah.
Well,
he's fantastic. I don't think any AI or automated thing could have saved the plane as well as a human pilot could have. In those cases.
Yeah, you can. It's a little hard with radio control, but you can feel when you're in the pilot's seat. You can feel when that flutter starts and a stall, and you have to do a lot of things to be safe to get back on the ground. So, interestingly enough, I'm an aerospace engineer, by the way. so we could have a talk about, and maybe we will for a second. So why mechanical engineering and not aerospace engineering?
Job opportunities.
Oh, yeah, of course. When
I was out of high school and I had to pick a degree, I'm like, well, I could get really narrow focused and go aerospace, or I could go mechanical engineering and still work in aerospace.
Yeah. That's good logic. You thought it through more than I did. I did aerospace, wanting to do NASA, and then when I'm a few years older than you are. When I retired or got out of college, I ended up in the defense industry working on things I can't talk about, and very few of them were spacecraft. So, anyways, and Thom's sitting there going, and how did he become a PLM leader at General Motors? Well, that's a story for a different day. But in any case, so this is interesting. Now, Scott, you joined us at the Digital Enterprise Society as a board member. Thank you for your service there. Describe what your role in the Digital Enterprise Society will be, and what do you have? What are your hopes and aspirations for DES?
So my role, title, whatever you want to call it, is co-content trustee.
Okay.
I'm with Mark. He and I are co-trustees for this particular thing because there's just a lot of content that needs to be created. This podcast just being
this is Mark Pendergrass, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we had Mark on a few weeks back, so this is good. So, and what do you hope for in terms for the DES?
Well, from my point of view specifically, just create a lot of great content. We want to become the source for people to get unbiased and possibly even unfiltered information about the tech industry. So PLM, CAD, you name it, all the tools needed for the digital twin, digital thread, including the latest and greatest buzzwords.
I think this is great. Back in the day when we were PLM World or even other things before that, this was one of the things that was really great about the people who came to the events, right? We were always, and this is how I got introduced to this group of folks, we were always comparing notes about what worked, what didn't work, kind of drain the swamp of the gibberish around all the cute terms. And it was great. I could talk to an aerospace company or a car company or a big machine company and get insights that would help, what I was doing at General Motors. So I think we need a clearinghouse for this. This is one of the shortcomings of I think, events, organizations that are run by the tool provider is they will be biased. They're naturally going to be biased, right? And so how do you maybe counteract that a bit? Now, having said that, there are certain things like configuration management and change management. I'll end on that note with you that are still fundamental, at least practices, if not methods and processes that go with them that you got to do. If you don't do them, you're going to cost your company a lot of money. And if you don't believe us, well, eventually you'll have a spill. When you have a spill, come back to configuration and change management principles, and you'll probably figure out the source of your spill, and it was way upstream, and you could have prevented it, right?
Right.
So maybe with that, Scott, got any interesting, either positive or negative experiences with clients? You don't name the client; that'll get us all in trouble. But rather the journey to better understanding CM2.
The journey to better understanding CM2. I call it my $70,000 rivet, and this is the story I share when I do training.
Was it made out of titanium or something? Whatever.
No,
70,000. No. Okay, keep going.
So. It's an international company with multiple facilities in the United States. Headquarters is where all the engineering is, and then the satellite locations do some of the manufacturing. And so a general manager of one of the plants calls up and says, "Hey, we're out of rivets. We're going to be a plant shutdown." Well, first of all, how'd you run out of parts and not notify anybody ahead of time before you're running low and shutting down? Let's go dig that root cause. But the engineer says, "Well, you have the other one in there. That one's just a little bit longer, and it's a rolled rivet. So go ahead and use that one, and keep the production line running, because that's number one, right? Keep the production line running. Don't shut down production. So substitute this other one. You're good to go." Boom. Engineer signs it off. General manager's happy, and he is just working away, and who knows what. And headquarters all of a sudden is starting to get these bills rolling in from all these purchase orders going out, and they're like, "What is all this from?" And the general manager is like, "Well, I can't move my work cell. I'm using those riveting machines on the other stuff that uses that longer rivet. So I had to get new equipment here in this work cell for this phase. Plus I needed new holding fixtures. Plus I needed whatever else." So, we caught it, or they caught it, at $70,000 spent.
Somebody's signature limit.
Use that rivet, never mind, cancel that, because at 70,000 we could have expedited the rivets that come in and you would have gotten the right ones.
Yeah.
But he already had POs that he canceled that were upwards of $120,000, $150,000 to be able to modify the work cell for a temporary change to use a slightly longer rivet. And oh, by the way, he was still shut down while waiting for the equipment to come in.
Interesting. So CM2 would at least make it visible, and thus probably prevent it from happening, right?
Well, the engineer made a change. We wouldn't have allowed that change to have happened without a more robust impact analysis. And during that impact analysis, you would have found out going, well, you don't have the machinery to do it. You don't have to do this. Okay, now let's make a business decision. Is it worth shutting the line down, paying expedite fees to get the right rivet in, or do we really want to invest in a line upgrade? Essentially is what was happening, because there's benefits to that too. Versatility, you can move stuff around, but it comes down to a business decision, not just an engineering quickly signing something because it's an emergency to start the line back up, which did they do anyway.
Yeah, and did they get back to the root cause? Why did they run out of the original rivets?
I'm sure they did, but that was a quality issue now.
It's another department, right? Well, this is part of what we're about in PLM and Digital Enterprise Society is connect the dots. These silos, I talk a lot about this in different forums. The silos do not communicate clearly with each other, and a shared configuration would be a great way to get people to talk about, the bigger picture. Knowing what is the configuration for this change, or this part that's missing, why is it missing, and go fix that, even if you got to go drive to the place that makes the rivets. The rivets aren't that complicated. So
no, they're not. Even aerospace rivets, still not that complicated.
So, well, Scott, it's been very interesting chatting with you. Good luck with the Digital Enterprise Society board. I'm glad to talk to another one of you. I enjoyed my time on the board at PLM World for a few years, and I look forward to what you and Mark and the rest want to do with content, and Thom and I will do our part and run some podcasts about it. Thom, back to you.
Awesome. Well, Scott, again, thank you for being here, and thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. You know, we do this show so that you can come up with ideas and inspiration, and we hope that you will join us every single week for more thoughts, ideas, and all kinds of information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Go check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.